Okay, so some members of Congress received a classified briefing on the mystery drones. Let's go over what they've had to say and see if we can figure all this out.
Well, Blake, thanks for having me on. I can't talk about what we went over in the classified briefing, but I will say this. Obviously, over the last several weeks, we've had numerous sightings and growing public concern in New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Ohio, many different states. And what's astonishing is the Biden administration has been wholly unprepared to provide an explanation. And I think this goes to a pattern of failure with the Biden administration. Let's remember, Blake, go back to the spy balloon that flew over the United States. And what was the argument at that time? That we should be concerned. The Biden administration said, no, we don't need to be concerned about that. This is nothing. That, in fact, was not true. We've learned that later. I think the new Trump administration, I know new incoming National Security Advisor Mike Waltz is looking at this, John Radcliffe, our new CIA director. There has to be a better way to deal with this. I think all options need to be on the table, and I think you'll see a much different approach when it comes to the Trump administration and a stronger, more robust explanation and being better prepared. This, frankly, should not be happening. I think we collectively understand that, and I think there'll be a different approach.
I had your colleague, Congressman Chris Smith, on the show yesterday. Here's what he told me, and I want to ask you about it real quick, if you don't mind.
They've seen it in a way that suggests formations that are coming off the ocean into the land. And even with the Coast Guard, I spoke to one of the commanders who said one of our 47-foot rescue boats, right on its stern, were between 12 and 30 drones following close proximity to that.
Talks there about a dozen drones that were following a Coast Guard boat. Was that incident addressed at all, Congressman, or anything else like it? Did intelligence officials sort of take you case by case in any of this?
Listen, I'm not going to get into specifics. I can't do that. We had a thorough briefing today. I stand by my statement earlier that I think this has been a pattern of failure by the Biden administration. It's been a PR nightmare. They should have handled this much differently, and I think there was a way to do that. But again, this goes to the pattern the Biden administration has engaged in not being fully prepared to provide explanations to the American people.
We've received only minimal information, which leads me to believe that our federal government has no idea, no clue, no reliable information about these drones.
No reliable information about these drones. That was his impression coming out of it. Now, as for why they're having a classified meeting, if there's nothing to see here, here's what the Pentagon had to say.
Why does it have to be a classified briefing if these are just hobbyist drones, they're not military drones? Why is it a classified briefing on the Capitol Hill?
I'd have to refer you to Congress on that. Again, sharing as much information as we can here. I don't have the briefing in front of me, so I can't tell you specifically, what aspects are classified or not. I can assure you, though, that, again, we are sharing as much information as we can.
Well, it's not a lot, is it? But did he actually stammer when answering that question? Caught out a little bit, right? Oh, that was funny. And here's New Jersey General Assembly Dawn Fantasia says, if there's nothing to be concerned about, well, let's just let her tell it in her own words.
If there is nothing to be concerned about in any capacity, why does it require a classified briefing of such to tell us they're hobby drones, they're airplanes? I call nonsense.
Yeah, me too, Don. Me too. This whole thing is nuts. This is from Jim Himes. This is this guy. Okay, here's what he had to say.
This was a classified briefing. What can you share, and are you satisfied with what you heard?
Yeah, thanks, Jake. It was a pretty comprehensive briefing, and I'm not sure that other than the details, much was classified. I'll tell you this, it was comprehensive in the sense that we had 28 representatives of the Department of Homeland Security, of the FBI, CIA, you name it, were there. And we established a few things. Number one, the chairman and I asked probably in 12 different ways, is any of this federal government operations? There's a lot of rumor out there that this is radiation sniffing or chemical sniffing. This is not a federal government operation. We're very, very confident of that. And then we asked a lot of questions poking at the conclusions that the federal government has offered up. And maybe conclusions is a strong word, but again, there remains no evidence that there is any unlawful unidentified drone activity out there. And most of the people who have expertise in sort of thinking about and watching and mitigating the threats from drones are saying, in as much as they've been able to actually look at specific events, most of them turn out to be regular aircraft. Yes, some drones, recreational, commercial. People are seeing stars. That there's again no indication that there's any illegal activity or any particular danger or malign activity that is concerning that group of people.
It's all stars, guys. That's right. They're having a classified meeting because of stars. The stars are classified.
And his administration say whatever it is that people are seeing up in the skies, it poses no threat. How do they know?
Well, we don't. And that's just the bottom line, Elizabeth. It's the excuse from my perspective is inexcusable. Bottom line is that they've admitted that these things are real, that they're flying around. We don't know where they're from. We don't know where they're going. We don't know who's behind it. We don't think it's foreign adversarial, and it's not ours. And yet for someone to turn around and say it's not a threat, let me remind your audience, if I may, it was almost 2 decades ago that we actually foiled a plot, the FBI and the intelligence community, of some terrorists that were going to fly remote-controlled airplanes. This is the pre-drones. These were the drones of 2 decades ago, loaded with explosives and fly them into the White House. And so that was something that was recognized as a vulnerability, a threat, more than 20 years ago. And here we are today, after 20 years, still dealing with the same problem. The bottom line is that the federal government is not being honest with the American people, chalking all these drones up as legally operated vehicles and aircraft and law enforcement. If that's the case, they would not be shutting down military installations because of drone incursions. It just simply does not make sense.
Yeah, you've been really critical about how the government has handled this whole thing. You tweeted that, quote, "Since I left the Pentagon in 2017, I have been stating the fact that our airspace has been unsecured for years with no one at the department taking it seriously." You go on to say, "I am glad that certain elements within our government are now seeing for themselves the real issue of ignoring existential threats to our airspace. We've ignored it for too long." Why have we ignored this? And, we're just seeing today a bill on the floor of the Senate to try and give one single agency oversight of everything was blocked by a single senator.
Yeah, Elizabeth, great question. The reality is that governments, not just governments, religions and institutions, they are solution oriented. And when you have a problem for which there is no apparent solution or immediate solution, there's this tendency to pass the buck or minimize the issue until once you have a solution. And I think that's what we're seeing here. I think we're seeing an administration that's desperate for answers. It's on its very last few weeks. And I suspect that are passing the buck to the new administration to put some energy behind this and solve the problem. The bottom line is we don't know what's in our skies. The moment we started calibrating our radar systems a year and a half ago to look for UAP, what did we see? We saw Chinese spy balloons wafting over unchallenged over the northern continental United States. So anytime somebody in government tells you, "Trust me, I'm from the government, we got this," I would probably. Right. You need to start asking some hard questions. That's fine. I'll believe you. But as Reagan said, trust but verify. They've got to be more open. Why are they having these conversations with Congress and not the American people?
Why is the briefing classified? If everything's fine and there's nothing to see there, why do you need a classified briefing?
Correct. Unless you're going to be hiding the sources and means and methods of your collection. But most of these databases are completely unclassified databases. If they are tracking all of these drones and helicopters and airplanes with transponders and other technology like radar that's available to anybody who's got the app on their phone, then why is it a classified briefing? The answer is that there is no real good answer. And I still think the administration needs to be more transparent with the American public.
So, Lou, what is it you think is happening right now? What is it people are seeing?
Well, it could be a whole host of things. The problem is that some people are reporting things that don't sound like drones. They're the size of an SUV, possibly the size of a school bus. In some cases, they report coming out of the water and moving away very, very quickly, and in some cases even disappearing. That's not a drone. Now, the whirring sounds and the quadcopters and whatnot, and maybe the navigation lights, sure. So the bottom line is we really don't know what's going on yet. And this is, I think, my frustration, as with many other people, when the administration for a month says we have no idea what this is, and then all of a sudden...
Well, they have been saying, I don't have any idea. They've been saying it's just mostly drones and fixed-wing aircraft, and no indication there's anything nefarious.
That's only the last 24 hours. Before, they were saying that we have no idea what these are. We don't think that they are that they have anything to do with a foreign adversary. We're pretty sure they're not ours. But they never said that these were all being chalked up to legal aircraft until about 24 to 48 hours ago. That changed.
John Kirby and the Pentagon spokesman were saying last week that these were drones and fixed-wing aircraft.
On Capitol Hill, members of the House Intelligence Committee meeting for a 3-hour classified briefing with top security officials from the FBI, CIA, and other agencies.
We got a lot of answers, but there's some unanswered questions. I think, quite frankly, the technology of drones has outpaced the law.
Intelligence officials insist there is no reason to suspect any threat to the public. This following a series of sightings near military sites from New Jersey to Ohio to Utah. The Pentagon now deploying additional counter-drone systems, including a so-called drone buster at 2 bases in the Northeast.
Essentially, emits a signal which is able to interrupt the signal on the drone.
And energy agencies knocking down news reports linking drone sightings to a small amount of medical-grade radioactive material that was temporarily lost in transit. The New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection issuing a statement to ABC News saying the material has been located, repackaged, and sent to the manufacturer.
At this moment, 1 year ago, there was another drone swarm that was underway. For a period of 2 weeks, dozens of unidentified objects swarmed Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. And even though that base has some of the most sophisticated technology in the world, it could not track, identify, or deter the so-called drones from entering restricted airspace. The same appears to still be true for our military, which has frequently blurred the line between identifiable drones and objects that are truly unknown.
Ranked Omaha, 6th kid, Rocco Peralta, pass ability to launch Hilo ASAP.
In July 2019, more than 100 unknown objects buzzed and swarmed around 10 U.S. Navy warships 100 miles off the Pacific coast. The objects were documented on camera, on radar, and on thermal sensors. Splash. In multiple shapes and sizes, including huge wingless orbs with no detectable propulsion system. Just drones, no biggie, the Pentagon suggested. A few years earlier, when Navy pilots on the East Coast encountered unusual objects on a daily basis in their training ranges, the debunkers called them drones or balloons or both, certainly not UFOs. 4 years ago this month, dozens of unknown drones appeared nightly for weeks in the heartland.
The sky is lit up with Christmas lights, basically. There's lights and things flying all over.
Sheriff's departments across the border area of 3 states have been flooded with similar reports since mid-December.
The U.S. military never learned who or what was behind it, as if it was just one of life's little mysteries. In the past few years, the all-purpose term drones has replaced swamp gas and weather balloons as the military's go-to explanation for unknown objects. In what might be the most ironic of the current sightings, intrusions by so-called drones caused air traffic at Wright-Patterson Air Base to shut down this weekend. Wright-Pat is where the wreckage from the 1947 Roswell crash was reportedly stored. Nice touch, drone people.
We have no evidence at this time that the reported drone sightings pose a national security or a public safety threat, or have a foreign nexus.
An assortment of government officials have tried to quell public concerns in recent weeks, but the public isn't buying it, and the mystery drones didn't get the memo either. Social media platforms are jam-packed with cell phone videos of assorted lights and odd objects seen nightly in the skies over New Jersey and many other states, including Florida, Texas, California, and Oregon. Most are likely the lights of airplanes, but some do resemble standard drones, albeit a few the size of an SUV. They do not perform like known drones. New Jersey officials have demanded briefings and say they were told the drones are not a threat, are not being flown by the U.S. government, are not being flown by foreign adversaries, and by the way, the government is unable to track them, doesn't know where they originate or where they go each morning.
It was the biggest amateur hour presentation I've ever seen about anything, okay? It was ridiculous. There were no answers. Every question that was asked by a member of the state legislature, great questions, no answers, no resolution. They don't know where the drones are coming from. They don't know who's doing it. They don't know why they're doing it, but they say there's no credible threat. It was annoying to be there.
The president-elect is among those who doubt what the public is being told.
They know where it came from and where it went. And for some reason, they don't want to comment.
That is not an airplane.
In the absence of credible information, rumors have swirled. Maybe they're from Russia or China or an Iranian mothership parked offshore. Or maybe it's a secret operation by the feds to quietly track down a dirty bomb or nuclear materials smuggled into the country by terrorists. Officials have tried to quash such rumors, but their credibility has been impaired. Just days ago, the public was told there were 0 verified drone intrusions into restricted airspace over military bases. Then, in a statement just days later from multiple agencies, including the FBI and the military, it was admitted there have been intrusions by unknown drones over 2 New Jersey military sites, also confirmed drone intrusions over a nuclear power plant. Prior to the New Jersey outbreak, mystery drones repeatedly flew into the highly restricted airspace over 3 critical air bases in the UK. So what gives?
It's a serious deal, man. We gotta. I think it's a test. Somebody's testing us, and we're failing that test.
The Pentagon emphasized today that it still thinks many or most of these drones are hobbyist or corporate drones, but that's not very reassuring since the military and police seem unable to track them back to whoever is flying them. 20 years ago, when the Navy pilots encountered this famous Tic Tac object, military sensors allegedly could track a golf ball 100 miles away. Now we can't follow drones that are reportedly the size of automobiles. You know, the hearing today was classified, but it's not a big deal, not a threat. Don't worry about it.
Not getting a lot of answers. Couldn't some of them be spy drones essentially sent by our adversaries or enemies?
Absolutely, there could. And, last week, of course, the Pentagon said, no, they're not. They're absolutely ruled that out. But, of course, now they're saying, well, maybe they are. And I think that if that was the case, if China is flying drones all over the country, over military bases, nuclear sites, that's pretty scary because we're not able to track them. We can't or won't bring them down. That sends a really strange signal to our adversaries if that's the case.
That's a whole different story.
Watching this unfold is great fun. All these officials and cops and small town guys who are asking questions about what's flying around in the sky, and they're getting the same kind of runaround that those of us from UFO world are used to all these years.
You can relate.
I can. Yeah.
So many of them are fidgeting in their seats for sure. All right, George, thanks so much.